listening to ZATR Radio.
Follow us on Twitter at ZATR Radio.
ZATR Radio.
Follow us on Twitter at ZATR Radio.
That is correct, good people. Welcome once again on a very pumped up Sunday night. You're with me, Julian, Dr. Faiz Kirsten, who I'll give some level to in a minute. And this is ZA Talk Radio, coming to you once again live on a Sunday night with some fascinating discussions. In particular tonight, we've got fantastic guest all the way across the oceans once again. Well, yeah, small oceans we cross. With continents in between, Dr. Omar Zaid, sorry. Yeah, guys, welcome to the show. As always, if you're tuned in on our site, just be sure to check the top right-hand corner, and you can click on the chat room facility, and you can engage with us, ask any questions you might like to ask, and we can just start a discussion. That's what this is all about, having discussions, talking about things that we need to talk about, very important things. So, are you gentlemen still with me there?
Yep, I'm here.
Good stuff.
Yes, I'm here.
Welcome, doctors. You see, this is the company I keep,
maybe I must
ladies and gentlemen.
Dr. Omar Zaid.
This is the company I keep. Yeah, you can go ahead and do that.
This week we have our guest, the esteemed Dr. Omar Zaid. Yes.
Sorry, Faiz, I don't want to cut into you, but I just wanted to make sure I'm running through all the little things we need to run through before we do the show.
Okay.
I've done the chat room, and spread the link, guys. We need to spread this link, and that's how we create a bigger discussion. Spread the link. It's easy to if you found us via our little advertisement poster, you can scan that with your smartphone. It'll take you directly to our site. We've got some people already in the chat room. That's always good to see. So welcome everybody. And yes, Faiz is going to give us a little introduction to Dr. Omar Zaid. How have you been though, Faiz? How are things on your side of the world? We've actually been in such little touch in the last few weeks because I've been so busy.
Yeah, you've been out of the country, and this week you've been uncontactable, if that's a word I don't know. But it's great that you've been busy. That's fantastic. It's good to keep busy, I think.
Always good to keep busy.
Yeah. So shall we go ahead and introduce the honorable guest this evening?
The floor is yours.
Yep, we have the esteemed Dr. Omar Zaid. We're very honored to have him. He's going to talk to us this evening about the New World Order, and specifically who is really behind this plan and what their goals are. Now, Dr. Zaid, is an ex-paperboy who became an author, an editor, a physician. He actually worked in trauma and emergency for 10 years, like myself. I didn't work for 10 years. I worked for half that time, for 5 years. And he's also a senior lecturer in human nature and ethics at the UNITAR International University at Kelana Jaya, Kuala Lumpur, Malaysia. He teaches the staff there, an integrated approach to understanding human nature. Now, Dr. Zaid has dedicated, this part of his life to researching and writing about the many occult societies that have guided, disobedient men to the present world disorder. And I really like that description, that term, disorder. It really is a world disorder, because that's really what it is, and not a world order.
Yeah.
There's, of course, much, much more to say about Dr. Zaid, but we don't have the time, unfortunately. But you can learn more about him at his website, which is at www.zaidpub.com. So zaidpub.com.
Pub.
So
P-U-B.
Pub, yeah, P-U-B, that's correct, yeah.
Okay.
So welcome, Dr. Zaid, my brother Zaid, and thank you for joining us today. We really appreciate your time, more so, since it's 2 o'clock in the morning where you are, and you made a special effort to get up out of your warm bed to talk to us. So a very, very big thank you and welcome.
Yeah.
Dr. Zaid, are you there, Dr. Zaid? Or Dr. Omar Zaid?
I'm sure he's there, and I've actually got a question for him.
Yes.
I'd love to know how he ends up, looking into all these kinds of things, because it's not often. I mean, I always thought you were one of the exceptions, but I mean, I'm sure there are lots of people there that are professional and in other industries that cotton onto these things and are actually willing to speak out about them, because there's often a conflict of interest, when people are when they have status within society, like for instance yourselves. I'm talking to you doctors now.
Yes.
And
yes.
It's easy for people to turn a blind eye when you've got already a good standing within society, and it kind of serves you to a certain degree, and that's part of why people don't stand up to what's going on. So, Doctor, is he there with us yet? He was with us a minute.
Are you there?
We've actually. Yes, I'm here. I'm just listening to you.
All right. Okay. Well, welcome. Welcome, and thank you for joining us, and thank you for getting up out of your bed. At 2 o'clock in the morning or 1 o'clock in the morning when you did get out of bed. Well, thank you. Really, we appreciate it. You're going to tell us about the New World Order, Dr. Zaid. My understanding is that the New World Order, which is also known as the Global Domination Agenda, or the global enslavement agenda, is a plan by the elite to take over all our primary systems, our money systems, our energy systems, our food systems, our healthcare system, you name it, they've taken it over, and to establish the sole authority, global authority, like a one world government, basically, with themselves in charge. And I understand the elite to be, the royalty, powerful private bankers, presidents of countries, all of these people, corporate CEOs, wealthy individuals, families, etc. Are these really the people behind the New World Order, Dr. Zaid, or is there more to it than this?
Well, that's a pretty big mouthful. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh, my brothers and sisters who have tuned in, and to you, Julian, and to you, Fayez. Thank you for this invitation. No, it's not that simple. And the people that we see, the people that we are aware of as the so-called leaders, they're not the real leaders. The real leaders behind this order, if you will, are never seen. They're never heard from, not in public. I'll give you one example. We deal with the Vatican, the Catholic Church. That has been run now by the Jesuits since the days of Napoleon. And everybody's heard about the Black Pope, who is the chief in charge of the Jesuits. But even he has a boss that we do not see. And this particular master of the Black Pope is hidden someplace in the Vatican and is a director of their massive educational resources and secret teachings and doctrines of the Catholic Church, which are never heard of by the people who attend the church. Most of the people who attend the church are just normal sinners like all of us.
Right.
And many of them are just simply hoping for God's mercy. But the people who run this show stand far above the leaders that we know of. And they're never seen. They're never heard from, not by the public, not by the most astute of the academicians. We know of their existence because of the study of world history. And I'm not talking about the history that is taught in the universities, because you'll never see it there. You have to dig very deep into books and catalogs and treatises that are never read and never even heard of. And the books that hold these things are not easy to find. You have to do a lot of research, a lot of reading to find them.
Well, you actually answered a question of mine. I was going to actually cut in and ask you, how did you come across this information? How do you know that there's somebody behind the Black Pope? And you've answered that question for me already, so thank you. Go ahead, Dr. Zaid.
Well, that's something that I actually learned by accident, okay? Now, this New World Order is not new. The only thing that is new about it is the technology and the massive bureaucracy that makes it possible to actually encircle the globe. But it is not a new momentum. It is not a new idea. It is an old idea. It is an ancient idea. And it is one that one can easily associate and understand when you review the story of Cain and Abel. Now, the story of Cain and Abel actually represents many things, but there are many facets to it. But it is essentially, and this myth, this story, is not just found in the Bible or in the Quran. There are forms of this same story in other traditional religious writings and non-religious writings as well. What you're dealing with here with the New World Order is the ancient struggle that we all have within our own heart, within our own mind, within our own soul, between what the Muslims call the nafs, or the lower nature, and the higher nature of man. So, the Quran says that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala placed evil and good in us. Yes. And the Bible goes so far as to say, that Allah recorded himself by one of the prophets, I think it was Isaiah, I don't remember now, who said, I create evil, I create good. Now, this is God talking. So it is in us, and we have to struggle against us, against ourselves, and in the world, we're now struggling against the children, what Jesus called the children of Cain.
Okay.
So that is who's responsible for this. Say again?
Sorry, I'm saying, what I wanted to say was that in a way, we we are fighting ourselves.
Yes.
That's the big
but
fight.
There's an organization that is responsible for the prosecution of what people call the New World Order. And this is what's lacking in amongst the good men. You see, the wicked men have organized themselves. Yeah. The wicked men, the wicked women, they have organized themselves, and then they have studied psychology, they have studied sociology, they've studied political science, and they have organized the world according to these principles.
I say that all the time.
So that they are now mentally controlling everybody in the world according to their nafs, according to their desires.
So you are saying that they completely understand how the human psyche works, and they are using that knowledge against the people to control them. So there's massive mind control going on. Is this correct, Brother Zaid?
Yes, this is correct. This is correct. Yeah, and this is one of the things that shocked me when I first entered the Muslim academic world here in Malaysia. Because, up until 10 years ago, I was just a struggling Christian who didn't understand his faith. And then I came across the Quran, I read the Quran, and then I became a Muslim. No one preached to me. There was no missionary work involved. Matter of fact, I was a Christian missionary at the time.
Yes, I understand you were a Christian missionary, so you obviously are well versed with the Christian scriptures, etc.
Well, I used to be. They're not on the tip of my tongue anymore. Okay. But now, since 2005, I have been in Muslim circles, and Allah made it possible for me, by virtue of my writing a book, to enter into Muslim academia. And I was aware of the New World Order before I became a Muslim, and I was aware of how sophisticated it was and how well structured it was. And I thought, okay, well, now I'm becoming a Muslim. And my gosh, by the grace of Allah, I've entered into Muslim academic society, so I'm going to be meeting and rubbing shoulders with the creme de la creme.
Right.
Well, what I found out was that these people have no idea about the history of the New World Order. And I was shocked about that because I thought, well, these are the people of the Prophet Muhammad salam, and they should be the best informed, especially about occult matters. They should understand their enemy, because war is incumbent. War, the practice of war, is incumbent upon Muslims, and the highest art of war is the knowledge of your enemy.
Correct.
You see?
Well, what do you mean? What exactly do you mean when you say that?
When I realized that my Muslim, say again?
I'm trying to understand. Just, I mean, you know, for our listeners as well. What do you mean when you say that Muslims are incumbent by war? I think that's what you said.
It's incumbent upon Muslims to practice war. You see, the highest jihad is against ourselves. Now, I described that struggle a little bit with the nafs. Okay. But this nafs has gone political, and it's politically organized. And it's not only politically organized, it's satanically organized according to principles of magic. And when I came into Muslim academia and I began to talk about these things with my Muslim brothers, they had no idea what I was talking about. And I thought, oh my God, what has happened to the Ummah of Muhammad? What has happened to the leaders? What has happened to the scholars? They're actually ignorant of the enemies of their soul. They're ignorant of the practice of war that is being prosecuted against the Ummah. They're ignorant of it. They had no idea.
So you're saying war is necessary not just for the sake of war, but in defense of one's humanity, basically. Is that correct?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Because war is not incumbent upon a Muslim person just for the sake of it or because you want to go out and kill people, but it's more of a defensive nature to defend, you know, your humanity or humankind, basically.
Well, what's
is that
right?
Correct?
Yeah, what's right? To stand
What's
up for
right?
what's
Yes.
right.
Yeah.
But now,
Yeah.
I mean, that being said, you know, I mean, our ethos is always to, you know, to peace for peace, because to fight for peace is a little bit like, you know, and that's what we try. I mean, part of the movement within South Africa, a lot of guys, that's the ethos that we try and bring across is to peace for peace. And I don't know, some people, like, I mean, this is a very relevant discussion because it's happening right now around the world. Some people don't necessarily agree with, and they believe that Islam is just a radical kind of religion, and that everybody, that the people that are within the radical movement within Islam are completely incorrect in what they're doing, you know. And to some degree, I do agree with it, but not completely, because it is very distorted as well with what's going on. Like, innocent people are being killed, you know, because it's very hard to go for those guys that we don't even know of, you know. So I mean, like, how do we attack something that we can't see? So instead we attack society as it is, because we don't agree with society as it is. Because these guys running the show, you know, I mean, Dr. Omar, you're talking about not knowing them, but I mean, the majority of the population don't know. But for us in the know, we do kind of know who these people are. We do understand that whole Jesuit link to the Vatican, and we know that the Rothschilds control banking within the world. You know, I mean, those are one of the key things we should be going for, I believe. You know, and I know Islam's got the Islamic finance movement that is.
Cecil Rhodes was his man. You people there know all about it.
I know all about it. Cecil Rhodes was his man. I mean, exactly. Cecil Cecil Rhodes is man, and that's
But
that was so
leaders
powerful.
didn't.
That's what was so powerful about what happened the other day when they tore down the statue of Cecil Rhodes, because it was kind of
Yes.
I mean, and look, people here didn't know why it happened and what it actually
Exactly.
what it was all about. They don't know what they actually did. They were kind of hopping on some very mediocre racism kind of card,
What you're saying, they didn't really understand the
They
significance.
didn't understand the
did.
significance of bringing down Cecil John Rhodes. They don't really understand who he was. They kind of know a little bit about what he did. But for the most part, I mean, actually, the argument started out about him. And instead of it being more about him, it was about what he represented and the state of racism within the Cape, which is, look, these are factors. These are things within the world. But this is how we are divided, and we shall be conquered. If we continue to fight each other over the color of our skin or what you choose to believe, then somebody's going to come along and conquer you while we're having this little squabble,
Yeah.
And that's what's happened. That's what's happened.
Right.
And I mean, I say this all the time. Like these guys, I've been saying that these guys understand mass psychology. They understand the game, and they've just used it very well. And in
They
essence,
understand.
And in
But
essence,
our people do not understand.
But you know what?
Our leaders do not understand.
But you know what's something very
Our
powerful?
teachers do not understand.
Do you know what's
This
something?
is what I'm trying to express here.
No, for sure. We get this. I know this, but we also trying to educate people out there that don't understand this, and this is why it's important to say. But the point that I wanted to make was something very powerful that they've done is, and this is what we're trying to do with platforms like this and bringing people together. They are actually, they've worked together as one. They've got a goal that they've been executing for long past their life expectancy kind of thing. You know what I mean? So guys execute a plan that is actually only to unfold in 150 years. When he knows he's not going to be walking around and, clapping hands at 150. But, with the amount of heart transplants these Rockefeller dudes do, I don't know, maybe they think they can. But they set these grand plans in motion and they operate as one. Whereas we continue to be divided. Divided by small things like the understanding of what God is. And not to say that it's a small thing. But, it's really, those are trivial things to be fighting over and not be realizing that we're just one thing on this world and we need to do the best we can, And so it's kind of sad sometimes when we're divided and even when we when we sing our tune too kind of harshly in one direction and we too, like, even me, I mean, I'm an activist, but at the same time, there are times when I can't play that role. It just doesn't serve me to play that role, to be that guy. As much as I am that guy almost everywhere I go, there's a handful of times when I just need to let my head down and just say, you know what, it's happening. I can't let it consume me because it actually doesn't serve me. It doesn't serve the cause even. It doesn't serve what we're trying to do. It doesn't make me a happy person. It doesn't make me network with people. It doesn't make me get out and get more people to know who I am and tell them about our show and get more people to, But when I'm a little bit happy and when I'm a little bit when I ignore it for just a split second, then I can get into that space and I'm like, actually, guys, there's some important stuff you need to know, And tune into my show on a Sunday night and we can you might learn something. You know what I mean? Like, I'm just saying, in a sense.
I think the point you brought up earlier, Julian, was that what you were saying is that we are disorganized and they are organized, and that's exactly the point that Dr. Omar Zaid said. They are more organized than what we are, although we know we're right, and I'm sure we're right because we've done all the research and we know we're on the right track, but we're not organized. Is that correct, Dr. Zaid?
That's correct.
Yeah.
The Muslims are not politically organized, whereas the children of Cain are very politically organized. So, and they're intellectually organized as well. I'm not sure exactly what happened to the Ummah, but their defenses were dropped probably centuries ago after Al-Ghazali was misunderstood. And you had the resurrection of pietism, which is now called Sufism. And I know that there are many, many warrior Sufis, but now I find that this is what's lacking in the Ummah. The warrior poet, the samurai, he's not there, okay? These people are no longer there. Instead, we have ISIS, which is a joke, a serious joke, but you cannot compare these people to the samurai, or you cannot compare them to people like Omar Mukhtar of Libya, okay?
Yes.
What I discovered when I entered the academic world here in Malaysia was that my colleagues, these PhDs and doctors so-and-so and Imam so-and-so, they had no idea who Cecil Rhodes was, or what he was doing, or who he worked for, you see. They had no idea that the round tables existed, or that there were occult societies standing behind these, sponsoring not only the Freemasons, but also their Boy Scouts and their Girl Scouts, you see.
But Dr.
They had no idea about this. So I, as a new Muslim and as a academic junior, I was shocked to find this out. I was shocked that they had been disarmed intellectually.
Yes, that's the point
and
I want
that there was no organized effort on the part of the Muslim intellectuals to counteract this. Okay.
But wouldn't you say this is a tribute to the enemies of mankind, you know, that they've been successful in making the leaders, not only of the Muslim communities, but all communities, making them functionally illiterate?
Yes.
They've been extremely
that's it.
Extremely
They've
successful.
been very successful.
And that is the big challenge.
They've kept the Muslim academic world preoccupied with useless information.
Correct.
And with religious talk.
Correct.
Okay.
Exactly.
And with religious ritual.
Exactly.
We've all heard the saying that so and so is so spiritually good, he's no earthly good. You see. And this is what's happened to the Ummah, and especially to Muslim academia, which is why you have people like Imran Hussein, who's probably one of the finest academics and finest imams in the Muslim Ummah in this day. He's completely marginalized with his eschatological perspective from Muslim academia. They're not even looking at the topic. They're not looking at it.
They don't even.
It's not discussed. So when I found out that, for example, let's take the letter of Muhammad that he wrote to the king of Persia, to Khosrow. He said in this letter, he said, you must, I'm paraphrasing now, you must, dear king, you must embrace Islam. If you do not embrace Islam, you will become responsible for the sins of the magicians, the sins of the Magi. Okay? Right. Now, this topic is not discussed, not only in khutbah, it's not discussed there, it's not discussed in Muslim academia at all. The occult realm is not discussed. The reality of the Jinn is not really discussed. Not so far as the political science of its praxis, you see. Now, this is why, Julian mentioned it earlier, this is why, for example, the enemy, the New World Order and what stands behind it, why they can move in the same direction from generation to generation to generation. And they make progress, and they have great success. You have to remember, Jinn lived for 500 years.
Who?
And so these occult families and their Jinn, they follow the same path. And the Jinn that took care and guided the grandfather is now guiding the great-great-great-great-grandson.
When you talk about the Jinn, Doctor, you're talking about an evil spirit, basically.
Yes, I'm talking about the unredeemed Jinn. I'm not talking about the elves of, the Lord of the Rings.
I think in Christian scriptures, maybe they refer to as demons. Would this be correct?
Yes, the Christians would call them demons. Yeah.
Okay.
So we have unredeemed jinn living for 500 years, being handed by bloodlines from family, within a family, from generation to generation to generation. So the fathers teach the children. The jinn follow along with this doctrine, and they keep on whispering in the ear. But it goes further than that, because these people who stand behind the leaders of the New World Order that we've seen, these are practicing magicians that Muhammad warned Khosrow about. Okay?
I see.
And this is what is spoken about in the Quran when it talks about the Jews in Babylon who learned from Harut and Marut. They taught them magic.
Right.
They taught them how to break the interdimensional barrier and sit down at the table with the jinn. They do this on a regular basis. We don't do it. Now, the magicians, the local sorcerers amongst the tribes there in South Africa, they're well aware of these things. Matter of fact, one of the reasons that the white man succeeded in South Africa was because the sorcerers there had visions of the white man coming, and their jinn told them to surrender when they saw the sign of the cross.
So the jinn told the local tribes there in South Africa to surrender to the white man?
Yes.
So they were not acting in the...
That's the first time I've ever heard that.
They were not acting in the interest of the tribes there in South Africa?
No. They thought it was their destiny. Excuse me. They thought it was their destiny to do this. Some of them had visions of the white man coming. And this is true all over the world. The sorcerers, the holy men, the practitioners of the spiritual arts of the indigenous people all over the world all tell the same story. They had visions of the white man coming. They knew what was going to happen. And most of them said, well, this is destiny. We can't do anything to do it. Now, you had leaders amongst the Zulu and other tribes down there that Cecil Rhodes had to deal with in a practical basis, because maybe the sorcerers said, no, you got to surrender, but the king said, no, I'm not going down. So what Cecil Rhodes had to do was, and what he did do, is he made it, and this is what the European occult group do. It's a part of their Orientalism. They send in the missionaries, and then they learn the folk ways. Then they send in the academics, the sociologists, and they learn everything about the people, especially their superstitions, and then they use the superstitions against them. And this is how Cecil Rhodes destroyed, I think, one of your greatest tribes there. I don't remember the name of the tribe. It may have been the Zulus. I don't know. But they used their superstitions against them. He actually had Christian missionaries convince one tribe that their cattle had been demonized, and that tribe killed all of their cows.
Wow,
now,
I didn't know that.
Yes, and those cows, those cattle, was their only source of provision. It was their source of food and trade for everything. So once their cattle were destroyed, the tribe was destroyed.
I see.
And Cecil Rhodes just sent in the army and took over everything. So this is what these groups do. They don't just practice magic. All right, and there's different types of magic, but they do practical things like that, and they use the people's culture against them.
Right. So is this
And this
because
is one of the things that Cecil Rhodes did there in South Africa. I'm not an expert in South African history by any stretch of the imagination, but I do know about Cecil Rhodes, and I do know about his connections with the occult British Zionists in England.
You know, a few people know about
when
Cecil
I
John
found
Jones.
out that my colleagues in the highest Muslim academic institution here in this country were inviting Rhodes scholars one after another, and they had no idea where they came from.
Well, we have the Mandela Rhodes Foundation, I think, in South Africa.
Yes.
So that says a lot.
Yeah, but you know what? Most people in South Africa, they don't understand who Cecil John Jones was. Lots of people in South Africa, even with this discussion that just happened when they tore down the statue, people didn't know who this guy really was. They were on both sides of the fence, and you know what? A lot of, for lack of a better word, I'm going to call them European people. Thought to themselves and kept telling me in discussions about it, they kept saying like, well, what would this country have been like if it weren't for someone like Cecil John Jones? And you know what, I don't know how to actually respond to that on the radio, but I mean my response to
it would be very different and probably far more humane.
Exactly. I mean, my response to that was generally, who said we wanted to be here, you know? And I mean, how does this actually, how does this work for us? Because it's not working for us by any stretch of the imagination. You can be like, well, you know.
Nobody's, the only person who probably said that the white man's way was the best way was Iblis.
I'm lost. You guys are speaking above me now. But just to also just welcome some.
Iblis is the devil, basically. Satan.
Okay.
Well, Satan himself.
I thought the word for that was the Dajjal. Oh no, that's the Antichrist, eh?
That's the Antichrist, yes.
Yes.
Okay.
So, this is the Antichrist, the spirit of the Antichrist.
Okay, Faiz, I'm going to give you a second, just a minute. I just want to welcome all our new listeners because they're coming in here. And I want to just also remind them all that they can engage with us. We've got some more guys in the chat room here. Naji says that the Jinn is real people. King Solomon had control over them. In his palace, and the scriptures are in Al-Aqsa, I think it's meant to be. Is it Al-Aqsa, the mosque there?
Yes.
It's AQSA. How do you spell it?
Yeah, Aqsa, yeah.
Aqsa, yeah. Mm-hmm. So, yeah, just to let all our guests know that you can chat with us and maybe ask Dr. Zaid any questions that you have, and just be part of the discussion, because, you know, we don't want to make this a lecture. This is a discussion. We want to educate people through also engaging with people, you know? So keep it coming, keep your little comments coming, and Doctor, I've actually got a question for you. I'd just like to know, you touched on it very lightly earlier, but I'd like to know, do you think something like ISIS is actually orchestrated by these very occultists?
Oh, of course, that's well known now. This is not an accident, all right? The Middle East has been under British Zionist influence for centuries now. I think the Portuguese were the first to arrive there in the Gulf of Oman and the southern parts of the Arabian Gulf there in about the 16th century, after they rounded the Cape of Good Hope. But the British have been there since then. After the Portuguese fell about 100 years, the British sedulously, carefully took over little pieces of territory along with India when they were destroying India, and this influence has been ongoing for the last 400 years. And what they do is it's the same thing that Cecil Rhodes did in South Africa. They find out what the people's weaknesses are, what their superstitions are, then they use these against them. And of course, the Muslims, they stopped educating themselves about 500 years ago, 600 years ago, except for a few. And they just became religious, and for the most part, they became pirates.
Right.
You see, this is the spirit of Cain. They began to enter into commerce, the Indian Ocean, the China Seas. They were all part of the Muslim enterprise. And yes, there were good people along the way, but for the most part, when the British arrived in the Gulf of Oman, for example, all of the little sultans there in the southern part of the Gulf, they were all fighting against each other. And the British says, well, this is great. This is good for us. Bad for them, because the British, they don't fight against themselves, you see, unless it's a pub brawl or something like that. So they use the people's weaknesses against them. And the Ummah has been divided, and naturally divided, especially right there at the Gulf, because you had this great division between the Shia and the Sunni, and that whole region was torn by that division, and has been torn by that division for 1,000 years now. So the British just took advantage of it. They're still taking advantage of it, and they're taking even greater advantage of Muslim ignorance and their religious dedication. See, the worst thing and the most dangerous thing on the face of the earth is an ignorant religious zealot.
So true.
And the British know this.
Yes.
They know this. And what these people do, whether it's in the Middle East or here in Malaysia, they fund religious schools. They fund them. They give money to the religious schools so that the people, the Muslims or the Hindus or whoever they are, they remain ignorant of world history. They remain ignorant of their own potential. So they don't teach them what needs to be taught in order to advance. This is a satanic principle. You see, right. Wherever you have superstition, you have poverty. Wherever you have sorcery practiced, you have poverty and chaos. Yeah, there is no order except for a perverted feudal system. You see, and this is what the British encountered when they entered the Middle East. It was already superstitious. The Ismailis, for example, of the Shia, they spread all kinds of superstition as part of their own psychological warfare against the Sunni. So much so that they created, this famous hand of Fatima, the hand of Hamza, and then people start wearing these as amulets around their neck and all this. This is stupid, satanic nonsense. And the British, they get a hold of these things, and they fund the people who teach this stuff. Then they find the charismatics amongst them, and they fund them.
So this is a failure of leadership, then.
You're exactly right, Fayez, brother Fayez. Oh, you get an A++. This is a failure of Muslim leadership, yes. And it's exactly as prophesied by the Prophet himself.
It's something I've seen, and watched for a long time. In fact, my research over the last 14 years stemmed, from the fact that I worked in a company, a corporation, and I did a thesis on organizational culture, and I saw this company. The culture was so terribly dysfunctional, and I knew it was a function of its leadership. And so I started researching leadership from a biological perspective, because the leadership course I did at the business school was very deficient, and I realized that. And so when I left this company, I made it my duty to research leadership from a biological perspective, because obviously I come from the biological sciences. And what I discovered was it was so unbelievably fascinating that I couldn't stop researching it. I'm still researching up to today. And, and that is why I could say with quite a lot of confidence that what I'm seeing in the world today is a complete failure of leadership. And that is why the world is in such a mess. People who are on the right side, people who are supposed to be on the right road, on the right track, they are failing the people miserably. And that's the biggest tragedy that I can say I've come across.
Okay, so now we've actually... Sorry
the
to cut,
satanic
Doctor.
leadership is not failing.
Yes. The
by
other
no
side
means.
is succeeding. Oh, yes. No, the other side is succeeding. But the side that should be leading, the people to a better world, those leaders, I mean, they call themselves the leaders of the people, but they are failing the people miserably. But because the Jinn are so powerful, or because the people don't understand their own religion, they don't understand how the world works, they don't understand the secular world even. I mean, Novus Ordo Seclorum means new secular world order. Most people don't even know what that means.
Yes.
And so that is the big challenge, I think, that we face. Those of us who are interested in making, this world a better place, I think the biggest challenge is the fight against functional illiteracy, quite honestly.
But now here's a question for you guys. And I mean, I say for you guys, I say for you mostly, Dr. Omar.
Yes.
Dr. Zaid, sorry, I get so confused. We've had Dr.
Dr. Zaida last week.
Yes, we've got so many.
Just call me Dr. Omar. That's what everybody calls me.
Dr. Omar.
Okay.
So now we've actually touched on this before here on our show, and we've come to the sort of a conclusion that the New World Order is by no means coming. It's here. It's been here. They keep talking about establishing a New World Order. And it's not. I don't think it's actually. Well, I don't believe it's the case that it's on its way. I actually think it's quite successfully running, and that's part of the illusion that it's on its way. That you're waiting for, that it's gonna suddenly come. What are your thoughts on this?
No, it's already here. The final political touches have to be put in place.
I think they're always fine-tuning it, though.
It's here in the sense that their cultural war has succeeded.
Yeah.
Okay. And the cultural war, what I mean by that is the cultural, the pop culture, the effect of the Orientalist. Everyone is speaking English. There's nothing wrong with that. But they're also speaking hip-hop.
Yeah.
No matter where you go in the world now, you have this hip-hop culture, which some people say, it's a counterculture. But it opposes the New World Order.
Hip-hop has been infiltrated a long time ago.
Say again?
Hip-hop did start out, I mean, like anything, like rock and roll starts out as counterculture, And hip-hop was definitely counterculture in the beginning. Hip-hop was definitely conscious in the beginning. That was all hip-hop was. I mean, I'm considered a hip-hop head, and it's definitely conscious from when it started out, and there still continues to be a thread of consciousness within it. But for the most part, what they've flooded in the media and what they've taken control of, because you see, if anything wields influence, they try to assume control of it, and they very successfully do this with all sorts of media, because they control the rollout of media, and that changes with the internet. They've controlled it for years. So something like hip hop comes along and it becomes infiltrated, and it's completely washed down now. I mean, what most consider hip hop across the world is not hip hop. It's rap, it's pop, it's pop, it's pop.
Well,
it's popular music.
I'm just using hip hop as an example.
I'm just trying to defend hip hop, Doctor. I mean, in a small way.
It's an art form that has a defense in its own right, okay? But as a form of global culture, it doesn't belong there.
What do you mean?
It doesn't belong anywhere globally, okay?
Why not?
Hip hop is a form of music that destroys indigenous music. It's actually destroying indigenous music. So it is destroying the folk soul of the indigenous people all over the world. So much so that the next generation is losing sight of their identity. Once that identity is gone, especially the art form of its expression, they are totally open to being possessed by whatever it is that the New World Order leadership wants to teach them or take them.
Okay, so I'm gonna say
because
this.
There's no. It's part of the cultural.
I'm gonna have to say this in defense of what you're referring to as hip hop, and it's not hip hop. What you're talking about is pop. You're talking about pop culture. Because hip hop has
Pop
got
culture.
it's pop
Yeah.
culture, and pop culture's got its face all over the world. But hip hop, it's not. I mean, it just happens to be one of the manifestations today, and that's what we consider to be hip hop. But that is not hip hop. That's pop culture. You know, it could have been rock and roll. It could have been anything. It's all pop culture.
No. Listen to me. I understand. I understand where you're coming from. But you listen to me now. Let's go back 2 generations ago. Let's go to a Malay movie theater, and we'll have Malay movie stars singing Bing Crosby songs. Okay? This is not their culture. This is not their identity. Now, do you understand what I'm saying?
I understand what you're saying. I think I get exactly what you're saying, and it's the pop culture. That's the pop culture. That's what I refer to as the pop culture in a way, because it's you know, it's the same way that
the Oriental civilization has no pop culture. Traditionally, there is no pop culture. There never was until the 20th century. You see,
that is true, yes.
This is the problem. I'm not talking about changes from one generation to another generation that you might consider progress, all right, towards a higher culture, okay? These cultures are not higher now. They've been lowered by the infiltration of Western ideas. And the hip hop culture of the West, especially the inner city Negro, this is not something that expresses high culture. It may express dissatisfaction. It may even express, there was a generation in the 50s that used poetry to express their ideals and their rejection of the reigning state of affairs. But what's now being expressed is not a high form of culture. The higher cultures are being destroyed. China's higher culture has been destroyed. Japan's high culture has been destroyed. South Africa's traditional tribal cultures have all been destroyed. And they've all been destroyed by infiltration of these Western art forms and Western ideations, initially by the Orientalists during the colonial days. Now it's being done by pop culture. Okay,
yeah.
It's being done by Lady Gaga.
Exactly.
It's being done by Madonna. It's being done by all of these pop stars,
yeah,
who are just out there interested in making money. Some of them are actually part and parcel of the satanic organization. Yes, they are.
So
and they've even admitted it. You see, but many of them aren't. They're just idols in their own light, pursuing their own nafs,
right,
misusing their talents, not for the glory of God, not for humanitarian purposes, but simply to make money and to become famous. All right? There's nothing of any saving grace in most of the music that's being produced today.
Yes.
If on occasion the best music is either jazz or classical or traditional folk. This is the best music that the world has ever produced. Pop music is not the best. Pop music is there to seduce. It's there purely to seduce people and to take their minds away from what they should be doing for the glory of God and for the glory of their own people, and for the safety of their family and the safety of their destiny. People are lost now because they're taking all of these drugs. And pop music is just another drug.
Yes.
I know. I was a pop musician when I was a young man. I know all about it. I was there. I was up on the stage in the limelight. Okay.
So with this,
I even performed. I performed up and down the East Coast, from New York all the way to Baltimore. Never became famous, but what during the years that I was doing, I was always working. I was never without a gig, and I enjoyed it. But it was not my destiny. And slowly but surely, Allah, by the grace of Allah, I was pulled away from that culture because it's a dead end. It doesn't go anywhere. It doesn't lead.
This is all part of the New World Order's agenda, to destroy the culture of a people and to demoralize them, take away their morals. Because when people don't have morals, when they don't have when they don't have morals, basically, then you're really not human, and you're open to any kind of you're vulnerable to the jinn and to shaitan, to Satan, influencing you. And this is what we see. Is that correct, Dr. Omar? Yes.
It's exactly correct. It's a war. It's a war that is prosecuted against common sense. It's prosecuted against common sense. Now, if you listen to me, Julian, I know you're processing this now, but listen to me carefully. If you go to the traditional music of traditional peoples all over the world, you don't have a separation between the music for the adults and the music for the younger generation. This never occurred until the 20th century.
I agree
never
with you.
Occurred.
If
you went to a traditional celebration, a traditional ritual of passage, rite of passage, whatever the case might be, a traditional play, all the entire family went together. Okay. And the entire family enjoyed the same music.
Yeah.
And this is not a question of individualism. This is a question of identity and group unity.
Yeah. I agree with you, Doctor, completely, 100%. And when you think about it, when what you just said now was that the same music appealed to everybody. And if you, I'm just defending hip hop. Just forgive me, because it's not actually hip hop that you're talking about. It's pop culture that you're talking about, because hip hop started out like that. Hip hop was just a rendition. It was a newer version of an older song. It was the same song basically. A lot of hip hop started out like that. It was because they didn't have access to guitars and drums and all these fancy things that you were traditionally supposed to make music with.
And what they've done is African.
And what they've done is they flipped it, and they played records, and they used cheap drum machines. Well, not cheap, but they used drum machines to enhance these records and to put bigger drums on them and stuff. And that is what ultimately became hip hop. And it is counterculture, and it was conscious. And hip hop, early hip hop, does talk about the very things we're talking about. Some very new hip hop still talks about it. I don't know if you know. Well, obviously you would know Will what's his name? Will Smith, the famous guy Will Smith. He's got a son, Jaden Smith. And I listened to some stuff from him the other day, and I was actually blown away. It was quite conscious, I'm just saying, hip hop is not. This is not the thing. It's the pop culture, and it's got this kind of cap that's trying to say I'm hip hop, but it's not. It's just fooling all the kids to this. And what's more,
I'm just using it as an example.
I understand.
Of how
I understand.
How the creatures who stand behind the New World Order will use an art form to seduce an entire nation.
Exactly. That's what they're using.
Point, yes.
No, I get that completely.
And on that point, maybe I want to come back to these very same creatures, because the question we asked was, who is really behind the New World Order? And now, would it obviously be fair to say that it's these demons, these jinn, that are actually then influencing human beings to do what they are doing, to create the kind of world that we're living in?
They're helping them along, but they're not responsible for it. You see,
okay.
It's man who's responsible, and I'm talking about the man, not specifically about the woman, because this has to do with leadership.
Yes.
Okay, the woman is not the leader.
Yes.
The man is the leader. And when men give up their leadership role, and they give up the war over the nafs, and they surrender to their lower nature, they've lost their leadership potential, they've lost their credentials, they've lost their spiritual credentials, and they've lost the grace of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala when men do this. And then what happens? Women and children don't have any alternative other than to try and do what the man is supposed to be doing.
I see. Yes, yes, yes. So it's actually human beings then that are responsible, that are behind the New World Order, but they're being influenced by these demons, these
They're
jinn,
influenced by the jinn, and there is magic involved, and but this magic involves only those people who are not consciously submitted to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala.
I see.
Okay?
Yes.
They're not consciously submitted to our Creator.
Right.
Not necessarily just Muslims, but people from other faiths, okay? Let's just take a drunken Hindu.
Yes.
All right? There was a time when the Hindus worshipped our Creator. There was no separation. There was no idolatry.
Right.
And if you read back into the Vedas, you come to this conclusion. This is also the point with the Buddhists. So if you take a drunken Buddhist or you take a drunken Hindu and you marry him, and then he gets some kids, and the wife stays with him, and he gets into a car, and he kills them all in an accident, whose fault was that?
Mm-hmm. Good
you
question.
See?
Yes.
Is it the jinn's fault? No, it's the man's fault. And it's also the woman's fault because she stayed with him and took the kids into the car with him.
Yeah, and she was being irresponsible.
She was being irresponsible. So it is initially the man's he holds a greater responsibility, but the wife is also responsible. The kids are innocent.
Yes.
And this is what happens to countries when their leadership fails.
Right.
The people who support the failing, unrighteous leadership are still subject to the curse that comes upon that nation because their leaderships have committed great crimes against God and against their own people. So the entire nation gets into the car with a drunken man. Okay, with a drunken leader.
Yes.
This is what happens.
Very good, good analogy there, Dr. Omar, I must say. Very good analogy.
This is a principle of spiritual law, and this spiritual law sits above Sharia.
Right.
This is spiritual determination. You see, because when Allah made a covenant with Ibrahim, or when he made the covenant with Muhammad, he said, I will give you dominion if. There's a big word. It's a little word, only 2 letters, but it's a big, big implication there.
Yes.
If you obey, if you remain righteous, then you will keep your dominion. You see?
Yes.
So if Muslims or any other people on the face of the earth, doesn't matter what religion they are, if they do not remain righteous, if they do not follow their fitra, their common sense, then all of these curses descend upon them and anyone who is under their right hand. It doesn't make any difference who they are. There's no protection, okay? There's just no protection. So what's happening in America, the whole country's going to hell, you see. This is what's happening all over the world now. All over the world this is taking place. And it's the righteous system of governance under righteous men is fallen prey to an unrighteous system now, under unrighteous sociopaths and psychopaths.
Right. So this is because people have lost their creator consciousness, their God consciousness, and so the jinns have come in and are now influencing them.
Well, the jinns are just saying, yeah, that's okay. God didn't mean what he said.
Okay.
He didn't really mean what he said. This is in the Quran. It's in the Bible. They always say, yeah, you can do that. You can enjoy that. Yeah, go ahead. Have sex with that lady. Have sex with your neighbor's wife. Nobody's going to know. You're going to enjoy it. Go out, get drunk, have a party, go dance. Go around and twerk in the streets publicly, okay? Yes, it's okay. Don't worry about what men think. Don't worry about what women think. Go ahead, put on the sexiest clothes you can, and then walk down Main Street.
Right.
You hussy. you shameless hussy. That's pride. And that's a good thing. The Jinn are saying, hey, you got to do what you got to do, right?
Right. Okay.
Do your own thing. It's okay. Do what you will.
So we're not following the instruction manual as sent down by the creator. We're following somebody else's instruction manual. Is that correct?
Yeah, we're following our own instruction manual, and the Jinn are just simply helping us to write it.
Okay, that's great stuff, Dr. Omar. You've actually answered that question because I think a lot of people really want to know what is really behind the New World Order. So it's actually human beings, but they obviously influenced by the Jinn. Now, one of our listeners said, Jinn are people. They're real people. They say King Solomon had control over them, his palace and scriptures, and something else they say. Let me just see. Under Aqsa.
I did that one out already.
Oh, you did? Yeah, my understanding is obviously a Jinn is not a human being. It's a non-human entity. They're made of smokeless fire.
No, I think what he's saying is they are real people, as in people out there. They're not like that they're real people, as in somebody's a Jinn. You know what I'm saying?
Well,
I think
some people are confused about this. There are creatures in the earth that we don't know about. Some of your shamans, they know about these. The Native Americans know about them. Some people call them Sasquatch. There are all kinds of creatures we don't know about, that the public doesn't know about. But the Jinn, these are essentially, if you want to use the word spiritual, yeah, they're made out of the smokeless fire. They belong to another dimension. There was a time when they ruled and roamed the earth in a different form, and were much more manifest than they are now. And there are people who are possessed by Jinn.
Yes.
And I'm not talking about somebody rolling around on the floor screaming and spitting feces, but there are people who are actually controlled by Jinn, and they're out in the public and they're functioning. Okay, this is a very, very high form of magic, and these are the type of people who stand behind the New World Order.
Okay.
Now, what people don't, you brought up the subject of Solomon, and I want to explain something here very clearly, especially for those people listening, because the difference between the righteous approach to God's grace and the unrighteous approach to God's grace, is found here in the comparison of, for example, Suleiman's control over the Jinn. Now, when we talk about Suleiman's control over the Jinn, it was not by virtue of his choice that he did that he had that control. This was by virtue of a gift from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala.
Yes.
In other words, Suleiman did not go through various initiation rites of passage in order to get control of the Jinn. It was handed to him because he was selected by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to be a prophet.
Right.
And when you are a prophet, there are certain things that you can do that other people cannot do by virtue of God's grace. It's handed to you. So Suleiman did not have to go through 13 stages of initiation and illumination to finally get the ring that gave him control over the Jinn. This is all nonsense. That's myth. Okay? It was handed to him as a gift. Okay? Just like the staff was given to Musa, to Moses. It was given to him as a gift. Musa did nothing to earn that staff. It was given to him. Okay? Now, so this is the righteous approach to heaven. For example, the prophet, when he made his hijrah and he went into the heavens, he did not do anything to enter the heavens. Okay? He was sleeping. He did his normal prayers. He went to sleep. And in his sleep, he had this vision and then this experience, and he was taken into heaven by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's agents, by the angels.
Yes.
Okay? The magicians do the exact opposite. They don't wait for God's grace. They steal it like Prometheus.
Aha, right.
They steal the fire from heaven. Okay? And they've established magical rituals which enable them to get to certain levels of power. Okay? All of your tribal groups know about this in South Africa. Your shamans, they all know about this. They have their own limited rites of passage to upper degrees of magic. And they do practice magic, and they can kill somebody by casting a spell. They can do it. And the Jinn help them to do it. But they go through severe discipline and all sorts of what we would call pagan ritual to gain access to these worlds, which were given by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to the Jinn.
I see. Okay.
So they do this. The righteous man doesn't do this. The righteous man has no interest in this. I have many people who come to me and they want to know all about the Jinn and how to get in touch with them and talk with them. And I say, you're out of your mind. I don't want to talk about this. You're bloody out of your mind. First of all, it's forbidden.
Yes. Yes.
It's forbidden. It's haram.
Yes.
Okay? So I don't want, people want me to go and meet somebody so-and-so because he has a Jinn and this Jinn helps him and everything. I don't want to hear about this.
They have their own lives, and they live their lives, and we should stay away from them. And we live our own lives.
Yeah, they live their life. There's a barrier there, and it's there for a reason.
Yes.
Okay? Mm-hmm. When the prophet was preaching, he didn't go out and perform some ritual to break the barrier and have the Jinn come to him. Mm-hmm. No, the Jinn just came.
Right.
They just came by virtue of the power of the word of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, the Quran.
But this will be talking about...
They heard this Quran being recited. It was something that they've never experienced before, and they came.
But with these...
Muhammad didn't go out there to collar them. The magicians of the New World Order, they have rituals where they go out to collar these Jinn.
But when you talk about the Jinn that came...
and make them their slaves. Say again?
Just to cut you in, when you say the Jinn came, you know, there's two kinds of Jinn. There's the good and the bad Jinn. So would you say the good Jinn came or also the bad Jinn?
No, they all came.
They all came. Okay, all right.
Yeah, they weren't particularly Muslims at that time.
Yeah.
And when they came and they heard the Quran, that's when they became Muslims.
I see. Okay, right.
Now the Jinn, the world of the Jinn, it's just like you see in the Lord of the Rings. They have their own kingdoms. Uh-huh. They have their own kings. They have their own places where they live. Mm-hmm. And yes, there are good Jinn and there are bad Jinn. That's not a problem. If you want to make a study of the science of the art, I suppose you can. I'm not interested in it. I just happened to come across it by accident as I've been studying the occult.
Yeah, that stuff scares me as well.
And I've had experience with Jinn. When I was in the occult, I experienced the Jinn firsthand.
Yeah, I don't talk much about this, but I'll say it on air now. I've also had an experience with the Jinn, and it's not a nice experience. So it's best to stay away from them. Yeah.
Yeah, I respect them. If I enter a new place or some place that I don't know, I always say, Bismillahirrahmanirrahim, Alhamdulillah, and Assalamu alaikum. I enter the place, and I do that for two reasons. One, to let the Jinn know that I know that they're there.
Yes.
And for the second reason, to let them know that I'm in charge by God's grace and not them.
Right. Good point.
You see?
Yeah.
Now, that's a form of putting spiritual authority into praxis.
Yes.
Okay? Into practice, which most people don't do. They just handle it as a ritual, and they don't think about it any more than that.
Yes.
And then when something happens, the Jinn come, everybody gets spooked and afraid. Well, this is not Iman.
Yeah.
Which means that they haven't really embraced the
Yes.
faith. They haven't embraced the reality. They
Yes.
haven't embraced the spiritual reality.
Very good
The
point.
magicians of the New World Order, they have embraced the reality. It's real for them.
Yes, they understand it completely.
They understand it, but they don't understand the end.
They don't understand.
That's why they don't fear God.
Yes, exactly.
That's right. They
That's
don't. They
why
have
they
no
don't
fear
fear
of God.
God. But
Well,
yeah, guys, this has been
they
a
have a fear.
this has been an
At the upper
interesting.
realms, they have a fear of God because they fear Satan. They fear Iblis.
But you
They
see,
fear him.
they believe that well, it would only make sense that they believe that to be God. So when they
Yeah.
that's why, but they don't acknowledge, you know, the
Well,
real God.
there are some of them who are just plain. They're agnostics or they're atheists, and they've just become humanists. So they put themselves in the position of God.
Yes.
And you usually come across these because they're very highly sophisticated intellectuals.
Yes.
Okay,
Yes.
and they know everything.
Void of
Yeah.
emotion.
Supposed to be known.
Yeah,
Okay?
I know. I've
You've
seen.
probably seen these
I've
in your
s-
leadership studies. and
Yes, I've seen it.
Yeah.
Absolutely, I've seen it also
They
in the
don't
house.
believe in God. They don't believe in Jinn. They only believe in themselves.
Yes.
Well, these are psychopathic
Yes.
people.
Yes.
They're psychopathic personalities.
I've come across.
Uh,
Absolutely.
Guys,
There's different reasons for that.
we've come up to.
But
I mean, we've gone well over an hour now. Our talk is actually only scheduled
Have we?
for an hour. Yeah, we've this.
I just want to, before we wrap up, maybe I just want to read out these three more comments,
Go
and
for
then
it.
I just want to quickly go through the second question, which we can take maybe 5-10 minutes, and then we can wrap up. Is that okay?
Sure.
Yeah.
Sure. I don't
Okay.
care.
I'm just going to quickly read out a comment here from Naji, one of the listeners. He says, the whole FIFA thing is also interesting to watch. Israel was about to be thrown out of FIFA. Then came the scandal. It's too much of a coincidence. Same thing happened in France. You know, they voted to recognize Palestine. After that came the Charlie Hebdo thing.
Yeah.
What's the comment on that, Dr. Omar?
Well, this is part of the organization, the global organization of wickedness.
Yes.
See, because what they do is they seduce people, and you have a lot of decent people out there who are just common, ordinary sinners, and people they don't necessarily want to publicize their sins. And some of these people, they get up into important positions of responsibility, and they have a certain public profile. And the Zionist network, the Vatican network, for example, they keep track of these people. And if they've committed some sort of major sin and they can document it, they just keep it on file until they need to bring that person down. Okay?
Right.
That's what they do. And this is one of the reasons that Congress is controlled or the Parliament is controlled. It's not just because people are bribing them. It's because they know what your sins are. They know what your secret sins are. And when they need to, they just blackmail people. They'll bring them out. They'll destroy them. And this is one of the reasons that functionaries in the New World Order, such as Freemasons in higher positions of authority all over the land, whether it's medicine and police or the judiciary, all over the world, these are just common, ordinary sinners.
Yes.
But they've joined a particular network where they've set aside time for collective sin, They go on these... But... these sins are kept track of. They're kept track of. And when they want these people to vote a certain way or perform a certain action, these people literally have no choice.
So they blackmail.
There's very few of them who have the courage to repent.
So they are
and
blackmailed.
lose their position.
So you say they are blackmailed. Is that right?
They're being blackmailed. Yeah.
Okay.
It's just common criminal.
Yeah.
This is just common criminal stuff. But they're organized about it, okay? That's why you have these spy agencies all over the world, and that's why it's becoming even more and more progressively a problem because it's invasive intelligence gathering on everybody. My God, why does anybody have to know what I'm doing or you're doing, for example? They don't need to know, except that they're looking for every little thing that they can use against you in case they need to or they want to.
Yes,
Okay?
yes.
So this FIFA thing was like this. The same with that French fellow who was the director of IMF. When they decided to bring him down, they used his crimes against himself and against heaven, against him, publicly, okay?
Yes.
And they do this when they need to. So I'm not surprised by this FIFA thing. Besides, most people, when they get to those particular positions of power, they have so much power, you know the saying,
Yes.
Power corrupts and absolute power corrupts absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely, yeah.
Yeah,
That's so true.
this is a fact of life, which is why good people need to be organized and they need to hold each other to account.
Yes,
Yeah.
Accountability is key, actually.
Accountability. And you know that from your studies in corporate leadership, is
Yes.
that the leadership is not holding itself accountable to the people that they're leading.
And that's why culture becomes dysfunctional.
Yes,
Yeah.
yes, it becomes dysfunctional.
Wow, this is fascinating stuff, Dr. Omar. I must say, I could talk on, for days on end on this topic. There's a couple of questions that came to mind that I still wanted to cover. I wanted to ask you,
Go
Ron,
ahead.
but I quickly want to address Kevin. He's one of the listeners. He made a comment here, and I thought maybe we must just address it. So I'm going to read out what he says. He says, "This has been going on for thousands of years, including Islam. If we our ego that allows this to happen, no one particular religion, creed, or culture, us as a species need to fight the internal conversation collectively." I don't know if you understood that. I'm battling a bit to get clarity in my own mind. But could you speak to that, Dr. Omar, briefly?
Well, yes, I can. This is one of the reasons that Jesus is coming back. You see, because and it was destined. He's destined to come back, and this is by God's grace. And of course, God, our Creator, knew that these things were going to happen. He knew that this collective responsibility was not going to be upheld by righteous people.
Yes.
You see, so there's a passage in the Quran or in the Hadith that talks about Gog and Magog and the end days, these days that we're living in now, and it says that no man can fight against them. No man.
Right.
Okay. So the last organization that could have withstood them were the Muslims. Okay. A proper Muslim caliphate can withstand if it's organized appropriately. But the Muslims never did that. After the first 5 or 6 caliphates, I think they all went downhill until Salahuddin, and he threw the Fatimids out of Cairo and chased them back into the hills of Afghanistan and Persia there. But after Suleiman the Great tried to do some things right, but the fact that we called Suleiman the Great and he allowed himself to be called Suleiman the Great is not an example of Islam. You see, that's not an example of humility.
Yes, yes, yes.
So Islam has failed. Israel failed first.
Yes.
The old ancient Hebrews, they failed. That's why Jesus came, and he said, okay, your time is finished. Just like Prophet Isaiah said, if you don't do these things, God's going to replace you. And now the time has come from your replacement. And he said, I'm going now, but I want you to wait for the Comforter for Ahmad. All right, this is in the Gospel of Barnabas. Very, very clear. So Ahmad came, the new man. I write about this in one of my books now.
Yes.
I write about it theologically, from a theological perspective.
Which
the
book
new
is this,
man
Doctor?
came, the old man was discarded. Say again?
Are you writing that book currently, or is it something that people can get hold of?
It's already written. It's in the my book called The Trinity.
I'll give you a copy, Julian. I have a copy, so I'll give you a copy.
I've written about it there. Now, let me complete this thought because it's very important. So Israel was the old man. If you read and you study theologically, Israel is considered one body, okay, one man. Now, and it's prophesied in the Old Testament that a new man would come, and that new man was Islam. So Ishmael replaced Jacob, replaced Israel.
Yes.
And Jesus came right at the halfway point there and said, okay, your time is finished. You had 1,400 years to get things right. You didn't do it. About 1,500 years after the days of Abraham. You didn't do it. You didn't settle the Middle East the way it's supposed to be. Now they're doing even worse. And so the new man, Muslims, Islam came, and they started off great. They started to do things right, but then each generation degenerated and got further and further away from common sense and further away from the example of Sahaba. And I'm not talking about the Muslim Brotherhood of the Salafi, all right? They're just looking backwards, okay? Yeah. They're not looking scientifically at the deen in which they're supposed to take command of the earth's resources.
Right.
So that man has failed. So the command of the earth's resources now is in the hands of mankind's enemy.
Correct.
Okay?
Yes.
Mankind's enemy. Mm-hmm. So, and this is the spirit of Cain. This is the spirit of Kabil. And it's so overpowering. He was the first murderer, the first liar, the selfish one. And this is the image of the New World Order. It's run by completely selfish people. They don't give a damn about anyone but themselves.
Yes, okay? Absolutely.
So these people are so organized that now, after the failure of Islam, it's too late. And the Hadith and eschatology speaks about this. Jesus has to come. He has to actually kill the man, Dajjal, okay?
The Antichrist.
The Antichrist. He has to be murdered publicly for Mahdi to then organize and retake the world for this, this short period of time, whatever it is, 7 years. Everybody gets excited about that. But 7 years, what's that compared to 7,000 or 70,000? It's nothing. It's a drop in a bucket. It's nothing to be proud of.
Yes.
Okay, it's certainly nothing to march off to war without the correct leadership.
Correct.
And especially a caliphate, especially a caliph that's been appointed to ISIS by the Jews.
Yes.
But that's what happens when you have ignorant people and you have young men who can't afford to get married. Yes. So what are they going to do with all that testosterone running around in their blood? Okay.
Yeah,
they're going to go find a woman one way or another, okay? And Islam has made this impossible in the Middle East. The leaders are corrupt. I mean, if you want to get married in Saudi Arabia, last time I checked it, the dowry alone, the lowest dowry, was about 60 or 70,000 US. That's ridiculous. Muhammad said the best marriage is the one that costs the least.
Yeah. Exactly.
Yeah. Well, this is what he said. The Arabs, they've lost their mind and they've lost their religion, and they're representing the religion to the world, which is exactly what Israel wants and exactly what Satan wants.
So now,
on this topic, and I don't think we can actually address this topic tonight. But
I say let's go for it. We don't often have guests from across oceans like this.
Say again.
If it's okay with you, Dr. Omar, there's on this topic I wanted to talk about that you just mentioned now, and Julian is happy for us to continue.
Go ahead.
It's this topic of the relationship between Saudi Arabia and Israel. That's actually, it's boggling a lot of minds, but people who obviously don't know. But you are in the know. I'd really like your opinion on what is exactly happening between Saudi Arabia and Israel. In fact, the other day they said that Saudi Arabia got Israel to drop a nuclear bomb on Yemen. So the question I want to ask you, what is actually going on here? You mentioned Saudi Arabia, the dowry, the Saudis are going off their heads, which it seems to me like it is. But I'd like your opinion. What exactly is going on here, Dr. Omar?
It's completely evil.
Yeah.
The Saudi family, with the exception of a few, and they're probably kept behind the curtain so that people don't see them, they're a completely wicked family.
Right.
And they hail from Najd, and the Prophet warned about them. The Prophet warned that this particular tribe would be arising out of Najd, and that they would wreak every kind of wickedness and havoc in the land amongst the Muslims. Okay. Now, if you go to Saudi Arabia and you look at the police uniforms and the army uniforms, they're wearing the insignia of the one-eyed devil.
No, that is shocking. Yeah, I've seen that.
Yeah. So this is just a simple sign that tells you that the whole country's been given over to Shaitan.
Yes.
Now, I'm not talking about the normal, common Arabs who live there and work there. They're probably shaking their heads. But the problem is this: if they're submitting to this rulership, then the wickedness and the curse that comes to the country is falling on them as well.
Because they're just
Because
passively
they're
accepting it. They're just accepting it.
They're just accepted. It's falling on them as well.
But those who resist, Dr. Omar, sorry to cut you
they're
off.
also, the Saudis are also a crypto-Jewish family.
I heard
according
that, yeah.
to the documents which I was able to get hold of. So they are not Muslim, not in the authentic sense of the word. Okay.
So they're pretenders. Are they pretending to be?
They're pretenders. They're pretenders, exactly. And when you think about Israel and you think about Saudi Arabia and Oman or Kuwait or Bahrain, these are all British protectorates, and they have been for donkey's years now.
Yes.
Remember, I told you the British were there for the last 500 years, 400 years, and they have steadily taken over the entire region. And they've done this by hook or crook and by cultural war.
Right.
Okay? And they've used the Arab stupidity against them. Okay?
Right.
Now, and the Arabs, these are stubborn chauvinists. They're neither Western nor are they Muslim. There are studies now on this called pseudo-patriarchy. Various Islamic academics have studied the issue. And you've got pseudo-patriarchs. They're just chauvinists. They're bullies. That's what they are. They pretend otherwise, but they're actually bullies who don't let their wives drive. And they have to wear black all the time, and all of this nonsense. This is not Islamic. This is stupidity. It's religious nonsense.
So, so the Saudis.
Let me finish now.
Go ahead.
Because the British government is essentially Kabbalic. It's run by magicians who have studied the Kabbalah and is Israelite in nature. Okay. Now I'm talking about the royal family and the upper echelons of the entire kingdom. And the entire Freemasonic system is Kabbalic in nature. And the Kabbalah is traced back to Harut and Marut in Babylon on the principles of magic. So that whole system, Israel itself, the Saudis, and the British influence there for the last 500 years. It's British Israelitism. That's what it is. It's a practice of magic using signs and symbols and psychology and force of arms when all else fails. Okay? Yes. That's what's going on. These are not Muslims in the typical sense. You can say, okay, yeah, they declare the Kalima and that Muhammad is prophet and that Allah is God. That makes them Muslim. But in practice, they are not practicing Muslims just because they pray 5 times a day. Because to be a Muslim and to be a practicing Muslim, you have to give your people justice. Justice. Because justice is what preserves human dignity. Yes. The human dignity of the Middle East is completely washed away.
Yeah.
Washed away.
So tell me something, Doctor.
It's in chaos now.
can I ask a question?
Say again?
I'd like to know. So, if you believe that the only thing left to happen is for Jesus to come again,
Yes.
then
Yes.
are you saying we've already fallen for the Antichrist, or is the Antichrist still about to also arrive and
Well, he's probably already born. He's probably already here. This would be a human baby who's infested with the spirit of the Antichrist, whatever that Jinn soul is. He will be here. He's probably already walking the earth, and he will.
But you don't think he's revealed
as the Messiah?
Yeah, that's what I wanted to know. You don't think he's kind of presented himself?
If I don't live to see it, you gentlemen will. Okay.
Yeah.
Now I'm 66 this year, so I think I've got another good 10, 15 years, inshallah, in me. But I'll soon be gone. When I first did my calculations according to the Christian eschatology, I came out to somewhere around the year 2030. And when I discussed this with Imran Hussein, we agreed more or less, but nobody knows the day or the time. But that's probably about right. Okay? So your generation is going to see this happen. Now, then the next question that I often get is, well, what can we do?
That's exactly what I wanted to ask next.
Told everybody what you can do. Now, yes. Julian, you want to go out, you're the activist and you want to go organize everything. Well, you can't do that by virtue of your own will. It has to be done according to Allah's grace. Now, the Prophet said, when you see these things, dear brothers, when you see these things, all these signs are falling off, happening one after another, like the pearls falling off a broken string. He said, leave the cities, go live like the Bedouin. Mm-hmm. Leave the cities, go live like the Bedouin. Take your sheep, your goats, and go to the mountain.
Things we've actually been considering.
Because there's nothing you can do to stop this. There's nothing you can do to stop it because there are too many uneducated, ignorant people in the world who have not won the war over their own nafs. So they're going to run after the Antichrist, Al-Dajjal. They're going to run after him just like a moth to the flame. And you can't stop it. You try to stop it, they're going to run you down.
Yeah, and I think a lot of people are experiencing that right now, that there's no justice, there's no justice in the courts, there's just no remedy, and these people
don't look for it. There is don't look for it. Don't look for a remedy. No. Yeah. If the Prophet said don't do it, he said, and if you can't find a place of refuge, it's up to God's grace. It's not up to you.
Yes, so true.
If you can't find a place of God's refuge, then he said, go do what the Native American does when they're in a similar situation. Now, most people don't know that Native Americans do this under certain circumstances. They'll go get lost in the woods so that nobody can find them, and they'll sit down at the tree, and they'll sing their death song, and they'll wait for death. Well, that's essentially what the Prophet said.
Yes.
If you can't find a refuge, if you can't keep it up, don't stay where you can be trampled down. Go off someplace, get a piece of wood, and chew on it until you're dead.
I think that's really great advice because the way I've been analyzing the situation is I think that's the only option left for people who can see what is happening and what is coming. And people go ahead.
Yeah. Let me balance that, Fayez. It doesn't mean that you just give up and stop.
Okay.
Mm-hmm. Now, look at me. I'm still here. I have a place of refuge up in northern Thailand, in a little village. I'm married to a beautiful Thai lady, and we have a little house there. It's in a village. It's a farming place, and if need be, we can run there. But I'm still here in Malaysia trying to teach people.
Right.
You see.
Yeah.
I haven't run off to chew on my piece of wood yet.
Yeah. That's interesting that you say that because
what I'm saying is you do what you can do until you cannot do it anymore.
Exactly. And we can still do.
Okay.
That means we can still do.
You continue to fight the good fight, but you've got to make sure that you're doing it under Allah's guidance.
Yes,
Okay?
yes. So
And this
important.
requires a certain degree of iman,
Yes.
that you have to get to the point where you're no longer worrying about your safety net. In other
Yes.
words, Allah becomes your safety net.
Yes, yes. We're
Okay.
talking about faith there, Julian. Faith.
Yeah.
This is
I picked
faith.
up on that.
Yeah.
This is faith. God becomes your safety net.
Yes.
Okay? And this is a place where most people don't live internally in the present day, because the government has become the safety net.
Yes.
The government is now replacing God.
Yes, they've deserted God and they look to man. To
They
human beings to
want
help
their
them.
retirement programs, they want their benefits, they want their perks, they want their salary raise, all of these sort of things. Nobody's thinking about the things of God. They're thinking about the things of the earth. They're thinking about in material terms. They're thinking in terms of what's going to please their wicked masters.
Well, that's again a tribute to the power of, the evil people and their organization that's controlled our minds to such a degree that we've lost faith in God, our own creator. And we basically look to human beings who are the same as us, creations as us, to look after us. I think, that's such a ridiculous notion that sometimes I just have to just smile and think, have we become that dumb? It just it bubbles the mind sometimes.
I'll give you one more piece of advice here. Because when you're looking to meet your destiny and you're looking for the people that you're going to meet it with, keep your eyes open, but don't choose them. Let them be chosen for you.
Okay.
Allah will choose them for you. And you'll know who they are in the following way. These will be people who will always give you something. They're going to be somebody who's going to put something in your pocket, or they're going to give you something, they're going to teach you, or they're going to somehow feed you. They're always going to be giving.
Yes.
Okay? They're going to put a smile on your face. Okay?
Yes.
They're going to put peace in your heart.
Yes.
And they're always going to tell you the truth, even if you don't like it.
Right. And I know some people like that, quite honestly.
Yeah.
So
the
exactly.
Other people,
yes.
The other people are just there as a trial.
Yes.
Okay. They're just there as a trial. Sometimes there is a trial, and they're like a thorn in your shoe, and Allah's just waiting to see if you're going to pick it out. So you can continue walking with Him.
Yes.
Now that sounds like a cruel thing to say.
Yes.
But there was a young man who came to Jesus, and he asked him what he should do in order to get closer to God. And Jesus said, well, go sell all that you have and come follow me. Well, that man couldn't do it because he loved his possessions too much. There was another young man. He said, okay, just wait a minute for me, Lord. I'll be right there. I've got to go bury my father. Okay? And you know what Jesus said to him? He said, let the dead bury the dead.
Good advice.
Now, you got to think about that statement. All right?
I don't get it.
Let the dead bury the dead. So when I'm talking about meeting your destiny, I'm talking about ridding yourself of people who are spiritually dead.
Yes, the living dead, eh?
Yeah, the living dead. They're zombies. They're spiritual zombies.
Correct.
And they're always just going to plague you. They're always going to be causing confusion, chaos. They'll always be taking something from you, and they never tell you the truth.
Yeah,
the exact opposite.
And there's many of them around, and we live in that world of deception where people tell you exactly the opposite of what is the truth. I've seen it so many times, and I always talk about the world of deception that we live in, and you have to be aware of this all the time, constantly vigilant, of the deception.
Well, I'm not talking about letting Aunt Hilda saying, Aunt Hilda, oh, you look lovely today, when she's, uglier than sin. I'm not talking about that kind of lie.
No, I don't know exactly what you're saying, yes.
Right.
But
okay, any more questions?
Yes, we're almost done, Dr. Omar. This is really fascinating, and I've been thoroughly enjoying this discussion. I don't know about Julian, but I've really been enjoying this
I'm
discussion.
quite enjoying it as well. There are some points that I get a little bit confused on. And, I was defending hip hop earlier.
Yes. Yes,
but,
no, I understand that, yeah.
But
I just,
yeah.
I wanted to sorry, you done there, Julian? Go ahead.
Yeah, no, go ahead.
Okay. I wanted to ask you before we wrap up, before we just quickly touch on the plans of the New World Order. I mean, that's one thing we also wanted to have clarified this evening. But I wanted to know, you mentioned Gog and Magog, and specifically I wanted to know what is the role of Russia in the New World Order's plans? Because obviously there seems to be there's a standoff at the moment, and something big is coming along the way in terms of NATO and Russia clashing sometime soon by the looks of it. What is the role of Russia in their plans? Is it a deception that, they're going after Russia? Is Russia part of them? I'm asking these questions because I've tried to analyze the situation as best I can, but I'd really like your opinion as to what is the role of Russia. Is it really animosity between NATO and Russia, or is it something more than that, or less than that?
Well, all of the animosity from either side of all of the great worlds has been manufactured. Okay, yeah. So for example, you go back to the First World War. The Germans were loved by America. The Germans loved America. The British loved the Germans as well. So there was a propaganda campaign because the Germans had organized their society very effectively, and they were economically out-competing the other powers, especially Britain. Britain did not like this. So they created a propaganda campaign, and they created all sorts of other things to bring them down. And the same thing exists with Russia. Russia was the eastern part of the Holy Roman Empire, if you will, and was probably the better part, I'd have to say, of the Roman Empire, if you will. And there's always been this confrontation between the East and the West. Well, it was finally brought to an end with the death of the Tsar, the murder of the Tsar, and the collapse of that feudal system, which is more Islamic than the democratic system that most of us have now. Yes. Because it's a kind of a caliphate. You see, when you have a king and then ministers under him, and then local autonomy, and less of a central government. Well, much of that was manufactured to bring the Tsar down. That's a very, very complicated history. But one of the reasons that they wanted to bring the Tsar down was to destroy the threat of Orthodox Christianity, because Orthodox Christianity is much stronger when you talk about faith than Western forms of Christianity, including the charismatic movement, including the Catholic movement. It's much more strong. Right. It's much more deep. It's you read any of the great Russian authors, you experience there's something that is completely lacking in the West. Right. It's just not there. Yes. And that is because these people took their faith to heart, not just to heart, but to will. Okay? Yes. And then they put their mind, their heart, and the will together. This body, mind, spirit sort of synchronicity that people like to talk about. Well, that happened as a nation, and that had to be destroyed because it was a threat to Rome. It's a threat to the Vatican. The threat, and the Vatican is where the seat of the New World Order actually is, that in London. Mm-hmm. Okay, so the ancient Latin families, or the Latin pagan families that practiced the old world Satanism that was brought from Babylon, then given over to Rome 200 years before Jesus. Yes. Now, so this is something that is ancient, and so Russia had to be brought down. But you can't kill a spirit. You see, you can't kill an idea. You can kill the man who holds the idea, but the idea will not die. Yes. And the folk soul of the Russian nation is still there. Yes. As perverted as some of them are, as drunk as most of them are. Yes. there is something about the Russian folk soul that cannot be defeated. You saw this at Stalingrad, for example. And so what's going to happen is that this folk soul is being manipulated now by Putin. Putin, I don't trust him. I mean, he's a better man than Bush or Obama, that's for sure. He's a superior man.
Yes.
There's no doubt about that.
Yes.
But whether or not he's standing on the right hand of God remains to be seen. And I very much doubt that the leader of any secret service is standing on the right hand of God.
Yes.
Okay. And I say this advisedly because there was a massacre that occurred in, I think the name of the town was Beslin, about 10 years ago, 11 years ago,
That's
where
right,
upwards of 200 children were killed and maybe a couple hundred more parents who were attending opening day.
Yes.
And they blamed it on the Chechens.
Yes.
Well, this was under his watch. This was something that he organized.
Yes.
Those Chechens did not kill those kids or those parents. The Russian army did, under his direction. Okay? Then he blamed it on the Chechens. So I don't trust this man.
Why would he do that, Dr. Omar?
Because he didn't like what was happening in Chechnya. And whenever a leader is losing his grip, they create some sort of terrorist act, blame it on an enemy, and then they gather the people together. So he's manipulating the Russian folk soul. And I believe that, see, I had a discussion with Imran Hussein about this a little while ago, and I told him that I believed that it was the folk soul of the Russians that bears this Orthodox Christianity, this Orthodox Christian spirit, that is going to align itself with Islam, with the righteous amongst the Muslims, in the end times, and they're the ones going to take Constantinople. But there is another part of that particular hadith that refers to that, and it goes further to say that after Constantinople is taken, that Rus is going to turn on the Muslims. You see, so this is what's going to take place, and most people aren't looking for that.
Okay.
So we're talking about Gog and Magog. Magog is actually the name of a river in Russia. It's called Rus. It's called Rush.
Okay.
This sort of thing. And that's related to Magog in the Old Testament, the Old Scriptures. And Gog is the high place where they worship idols and the moon god. The moon god is called Sin, and Sin is the name of the ancient Dravidian god who is related directly to Cain. So this area, Gog and Magog, this is the area where the myth has it that the boat, the Ark of Noah, Prophet Noah, landed. And, you know, some of his children stayed with him. The others did not. They did not stay with the religion of God. They did not stay with pure monotheism. Some went west, some went east, and another one, grandchildren went down to establish Egypt. His granddaughter was married to one of Cain's children. They went down to establish the mysteries in Egypt. So there you have Gog and Magog. It's the east and the western children, tribes dispersed after that great dispersal following the flood. There was another dispersal when the Tower of Babylon was destroyed. And so you see how central Babylon is to the whole scheme of things here. And so when we're talking about Russia today, and we're talking about what's taking place, and is this a manufactured sort of Hegelian dialectic? You bet. You bet it is. Because what's happening is many of the high Jewish bankers and the magicians above them, they're moving their money over to BRICS. and they're going to pretend that there's a failure in the West, and the BRICS is going to be the savior of the world, when in fact it's going to be the actually the vessel which is going to bring Antichrist to the forefront.
Wow, that's
probably exactly under Israel's rule or Israelis' rule.
That is powerful stuff.
Wow, that's a really profound point you made there, actually. I'll have to spend a couple of days, sort of getting my mind around that. Yes, absolutely. I mean, I would really love to discuss it, quite honestly, but I think maybe we're going to have you on at another time again, Dr. Omar, really, because I wanted to also talk a bit more about Gog and Magog, because some people say, the Zionists are actually Gog and Magog. And now this point you bring about the BRICS, being the vessel.
But you've got a point there. The Zionists they're probably both Gog and Magog, because they hail from that region. That's where the Khazarians were.
Correct.
North of the region,
yes.
okay?
Yes.
That's where the river Rus is. It runs through Khazaria, which is the Ukraine now. It's essential. So this these Jinn,
yes,
these are the same families of Jinn in these areas. They're ancient mystery Jinn. We're talking about unredeemed Jinn. They live there. These are their mountains. This is their country. They want to destroy it themselves, you see.
Yeah, wow.
That's how much they hate men. They hate men.
That is absolutely fascinating information there.
But I think
it all comes from Khazaria. They call them now the Khazaria Mafia.
They're not Jews. They're not real Jews. They're not Bani Israel. The real Bani Israel, for the most part, most of them never really left.
Can you send me an article about that in the week?
Pardon. Say again?
Faiz?
Sorry, Julian, I didn't hear you.
Didn't you send me an article about those guys in the week?
Oh yeah, it's called the Rothschild Khazaria Mafia.
Yeah.
They are the guys that are basically behind the.
This is a deadly lot of people.
Yes.
Deadly lot of people.
Yes.
You can't confront these people without God's grace.
Yeah.
That's why a prophet has to come back, and that's why Isa is coming back. Not so much. I mean, Muhammad was the last prophet, so that Isa's return is not a new prophet. This is the same prophet he was before. He's just coming back to take care of some unfinished business.
Yeah, let's hope sooner rather than later.
Having been, at the forefront of the banking situation here in South Africa and following cases around the world, I could see, the kind of evil that's at work here because, as I mentioned earlier on, there's no remedy in the courts. The judiciary seems completely evil. And as you say, these people are deadly. I mean, they don't care two hoots. They just don't want to hear anything. They don't want to answer any questions. And it's basically tyranny. It's actually fascism that I realize that we're dealing with. We're dealing with evil fascist people. And so, as you say, without the grace of God, you cannot even think about dealing with these people at any level, quite honestly.
But we've reached about 2 hours now on this show.
Can we? I'm sorry, but can we wrap this up? I've got to get to the office in just a few hours.
Yeah, we've actually just gone over. We've just gone on to about 2 hours.
4 a.m. here.
Thank you so much for taking the time, man.
Yeah,
for being with us this evening.
We're so grateful.
We'll do it again. It was a real pleasure. I enjoy doing this, and it's actually part of my destiny to share what knowledge I have in any way possible. So when you asked me to do this, I was very pleased.
No, we are
very pleased.
Deeply grateful. And as I said, we haven't really finished, so we're definitely going to have to get you back sometime.
This is not a topic that you kind of finish on, though. It can go on and on and on, and people need to know this stuff. So, yeah thanks.
Well, we can do it. I think I can do this maybe once a month for a bit. So let's try and do it again next month. Meanwhile,
God willing, absolutely.
Okay.
Yeah, absolutely. We'll be in touch.
All right then, gentlemen. Until next time, I'll say goodbye to you. Wassalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
Walaikum salam, and
Real pleasure.
Have a good sleep further on. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Doctor, for being
Good
with
night
us.
now.
It's been a
Well,
very big
bye-bye.
pleasure.
Good morning for me.
And I'm just
Good night.
turning these guys down in the background because they're not going to end. And the show's now come to an end. So thanks very much for being with us for the last 2 hours. And sorry that we didn't field more questions or, do anything like to that effect. Sorry, I'm losing my train of thought, doing a bunch of things out here. But yeah, thanks for tuning in. And just remember, if you enjoyed the talk, it is available as a podcast. So we'll be sending the SoundCloud link out shortly. And join us again next week. We don't know what we have lined up for next week just yet, but we'll definitely have something good. We'll definitely let you guys know about what's on the agenda. Anyway, too many things running through my mind. Thanks for tuning in. Thanks for being with us. We know it was been long. And spread the link around, spread the podcast around if you found it interesting. And God bless. Okay, that was supposed to do something.
You're listening to ZA
And it was
Talk
supposed to do
Radio.
that. Good night.
Follow us on Twitter at ZA Talk Radio.
ZA Talk Radio.